ایک پاکستان کا مطلب کیا؟ لا الہ الا اللہ، یہی نعرہ ہے جو ہر ایک لگاتا ہے، یہی نعرہ ہے جو ہمیں بتایا گیا کہ لگایا گیا۔ ہم ہندوستان سے الگ ہوئے تاکہ مسلمان سکھ کا سانس لیں، اور مسلمان جو ہے وہ اہل ایمان جو ہے وہ اپنے دین کے لیے اس کو پریکٹس کرنے کے لیے ان کو آزادی ہو۔ آج آپ کو میں بڑے فخر سے بتا رہا ہوں کہ پاکستان میں حج کے اوپر ٹیکس ہے اور انڈیا میں حج پہ سبسڈی ہے۔ اگر آپ ایک ہندوستان کے مسلمان ہیں تو آپ 80 سے 90 ہزار روپے میں حج کر سکتے ہیں، اور اگر آپ پاکستان کے مسلمان ہیں تو ذرا کچھ لاکھ گن کے رکھ لیں کہ اس میں آپ نے حج کرنا ہے۔ پاکستان کا مطلب کیا تھا، اب یہ بتائیں گے ہمیں۔
سال کا بھی جانا، لیکن چھوڑو، ہمارے نصیبوں میں یہی کچھ رہ گیا ہے۔
حسن صاحب، رمضان کی آمد کو رحمتوں کا مہینہ کہا جاتا ہے رمضان کو، لیکن عام عوام کے لیے تو رحمت بھی زحمت بن کر آتی ہے مہنگائی کے ساتھ، کہ مہنگائی کا بھی کوئی رشتہ ہے کیا رمضان کی آمد کے ساتھ؟
لیکن بات سنیں، میری یہی وہ باتیں ہیں جن پہ لوگ مس انڈرسٹینڈ کر جاتے ہیں، حالانکہ جتنا میرا دل دکھتا ہے، ہندوستان میں سبسڈی ملتی ہے رمضان میں، وہاں کے رہنے والے مسلمانوں کے ساتھ وہ سلوک نہیں ہوتا۔ یہ تو قاتلوں کا معاشرہ ہے۔ ہمارے ایک دوست تھے فاروق گیلانی مرحوم، وہ کہا کرتے تھے، وہ بہت سینئر بیوروکریٹ تھے، اکنامکس ان کا میدان تھا، تو میں نے ایک دفعہ پوچھا، میں نے کہا یار پاکستان کی اکانومی، اس نے کہا پاکستان کی اکانومی صرف اتنی ہے کہ ہر ایک کا ہاتھ دوسرے کی جیب میں، وہ چاہے افراد ہوں چاہے ادارے ہوں۔ سو جو یہ ہو رہا ہے، یہ تو اللہ معاف کرے، میں نے چند دن پہلے میرے منہ سے نکل گیا تھا کہ لعنتی لوگ ہیں۔ وہ کسی نے پروٹیسٹ کیا، میں نے کہا ہیں جو اپنے غریب بھائیوں، اپنے بچوں، مجھے سوچنا چاہیے نا، یہ میرے ہی چلتے پھرتے جو معصوم بچے بچیاں ہیں، اگر یہ ڈھنگ سے افطار بھی نہ کر سکے روزہ، اور وہ بھی صرف اس لیے کہ میں بدماشی کر رہا ہوں، میں بلیک میلنگ کر رہا ہوں، تو ڈوب کرنے کا مقام ہے۔ لیکن اس کے باوجود ان کا خیال ہے انہیں جنتیں ملیں گی، تو دیکھتے ہیں کیا ہوتا
کہتے ہیں۔ لیکن اس مزید میں بات بتاتی ہوں، یہاں پہ ایک مسلمان شاعر آیا، وہ انڈیا کا ہے، تو میں نے اس کا آپ لوگ، میں نے اس کو انٹرویو کیا، انفارچونیٹلی میرا کیمرہ جو ہے نا وہ ٹیپ سے طرح سے انٹرویو نہیں ہوا اس میں، آئی ڈونٹ نو وائی، تو میں وہ پوسٹ نہیں کر سکی۔ اس بندے نے کہا، کہتے ہیں کہ میں نے کہا آپ لوگ انڈیا میں محفوظ ہے، کہتا ہے مسلمان دنیا میں کہیں بھی اتنے محفوظ نہیں جتنے انڈیا میں ہو۔ آئی وش کہ میں نے وہ اس مسلمان شاعر کا وہ میں نے نا وہ نام سے وہ ٹیپ ہو گیا ہوتا، ٹھیک ہے، بٹ دس از واٹ ہی سیڈ۔ تو انڈیا میں جو مسلمان ہیں نا وہ کم از کم پاکستان کے مقابلے میں انڈیا میں زیادہ سیف ہیں،
بہت زیادہ سکور ہے۔ آپ یہ دیکھیں نا کہ ہمیں، جیسا ہم انڈیا میں نہیں ہیں لیکن ہم چیزوں کو دیکھتے ہیں، انڈیا سے جو چیزیں آتی ہیں، پروڈکٹس آتی ہیں، موویز آتی ہیں، ڈراماز آتی ہیں، ان کی گیم ہے یا جو بھی چیزیں آتی ہیں، ہم ان کو دیکھتے ہیں۔ وہاں پر
بات یہ ہے کہ ہمارے ہاں جو بنگلہ دیش میں سب سے زیادہ جو زیادتی کی ہے وہ جنرل ٹکا خانے کی ہے، سارا میسیکر تو اسی نے کیا ہے۔ اس کے بعد یہ ہوا کہ
وہ کون تھا؟
وہ تھا
جنرل
تھا، آرمی چیف تھا۔ اس کا یہ کہنا تھا، اس نے بیان بھی دیا کہ ہمیں زمین چاہیے، وی وانٹ لینڈ، وی ڈونٹ وانٹ پیپل، ہے نا، یہ دیا۔ اس کے بعد یہ ہوا کہ آخری زمانے میں وہاں پر جنرل نیازی کو بھیج دیا گیا، جب حالات بالکل سمجھیں حد سے جو ہے مطلب باہر ہو گئے تھے، تو سرنڈر کر دیا گیا۔ اور بڑی دلچسپ بات یہ، میں نے کتابوں میں پڑھا، میں بنگلہ دیش تو کبھی نہیں گیا، تو کتابوں میں نے پڑھا ہے کہ جب وہ سرنڈر ہو رہا تھا جنرل اروڑا کے سامنے، تو کسی بنگالی نے جو مجمع لگا ہوا تھا جوتا کھینچ کے مارا اس کے منہ پہ، نیازی کے، سمجھے نا، اسے مارنا بھی چاہیے تھا، اس کے علاوہ وہ کیا کر سکتا تھا؟
ہاں نہیں، میں تو کہتی ہوں بہت اچھا۔
دوسرے میں نے کتابوں میں پڑھا ہے کہ جنرل نیازی نے جنرل اروڑا سے جب اس میں جو پسٹل دینا پڑتا ہے واپس، جب پسٹل واپس کیا تو جنرل اروڑا سے پوچھا کہ جنرل ڈیڈ آئی فاٹ ویل، یعنی آپ ذرا اندازہ کریں کہ اتنا کچھ کرنے کے بعد وہ یہ بھی مطلب پوچھ رہے ہیں کہ کیا میں اچھا لڑا ہوں۔ یہ میں نے کتابوں میں پڑھا ہے، میں بنگلہ دیش تو کبھی نہیں گیا۔ मुझे तो अपने बंगाली दोस्त बहुत याद आते हैं।
नहीं, इट्स वेरी वेरी सैड। मैं तो बहुत ही शर्मनाक और अफसोस की बात है कि अगर तुम लोग बांग्लादेश आज़ादी चाहता था, हम लोग उसको नहीं छोड़ना चाहते, लेकिन ये कहाँ का असूल है कि उनको मारो पीटो, उनकी औरतों को रेप करो। ये तो बहुत ही ज्यादा ज्यादती है ना, बहुत ज्यादती है। और मैं तो कहती हूँ जितनी से माफी मांगी जाए उतनी कम है, लेकिन अल्लाह की तरफ से सजा मिल रही है ना पाकिस्तान को। किसी की जान माल महफूज नहीं है, अपने ही हाथों। और बांग्लादेशी सुकून से वहाँ टेररिज्म तो नहीं होता।
वहाँ भी
को बांग्लादेश आज़ादी चाहता था, हम लोग उसको नहीं छोड़ना चाहते, लेकिन ये कहाँ का असूल है कि उनको मारो पीटो, उनकी औरतों को रेप करो। ये तो बहुत ही ज्यादा ज्यादती है ना, बहुत ज्यादती है। और मैं तो कहती हूँ जितनी से माफी मांगी जाए उतनी कम है, लेकिन अल्लाह की तरफ से सजा मिल रही है ना पाकिस्तान को। किसी की जान माल महफूज नहीं है, अपने ही हाथों। और को बांग्लादेश आज़ादी चाहता था, हम लोग उसको नहीं छोड़ना चाहते, लेकिन ये कहाँ का असूल है कि उनको मारो पीटो, उनकी औरतों को रेप करो। ये तो बहुत ही ज्यादा ज्यादती है ना, बहुत ज्यादती है। और मैं तो कहती हूँ जितनी से माफी मांगी जाए उतनी कम है, लेकिन अल्लाह की तरफ से सजा मिल रही है ना पाकिस्तान को। किसी की जान माल महफूज नहीं है, अपने ही हाथों। और
Pakistan, as I moved its troops forward a considerable time before we did. Now, while they were there on our border, nobody raised any question that this would be endangers peace, it endangers our country. Now, when we felt compelled in the interest of our defense, the whole world seems to have woken up. Now, it seems a very unrealistic situation to me. And as far as going back is concerned, our positions are much further back. I mean, we don't have a second line that could serve us should Pakistan decide to attack after all. So it would not be, I don't think I would be doing my duty to the country and to the people if we would agree. And one thing you must remember is that we have never attacked anybody, but we have been attacked 3 times.
But do you support
The Bangladeshis call it the forgotten genocide. In 1971, Pakistani soldiers and their local allies killed thousands, perhaps millions of people in what was then known as East Pakistan. Out of the ashes of that conflict was born an independent Bangladesh. I'm Fauzia Ibrahim. In this edition of 101 East, we examine the cost of the war of liberation in Bangladesh. We're in the heart of Bangladesh's capital, Dhaka, once an integral part of Pakistan. But ethnic differences and demands for a fairer share of resources led to calls for Bangladeshi independence. Tony Bertley reports on the horrific consequences.
This is a crime, a major crime against humanity that went unpunished.
Our girls, our mothers, our sisters, they were violated.
Once this was simply a 6-room private house, it's now testament to one of the biggest examples of genocide of the 20th century. The privately run Museum of the War of Liberation is dedicated to upwards of 3 million people, half of them Hindus, allegedly murdered during a 9-month period in 1971 by Pakistani forces and their allies. For years, few people in Bangladesh spoke about the horrors of that period.
There were people who even didn't know about the liberation war. They didn't even know about the genocide because there was a systematic policy of erasing that part of history after 1975.
It was a bloodbath that lasted for 9 months. In those days, Bangladesh was known as East Pakistan and governed by Islamabad. When momentum grew for independence, Pakistan launched a terrifying crackdown. Tens of thousands of civilians and freedom fighters were murdered. 10 million refugees fled to neighbouring India, but it led to the creation of the new nation of Bangladesh, but at a terrible cost.
It's hard to imagine, but this place of sport and recreation was once a place of execution and butchery. It's claimed that in 1971, Hundreds of people, including women and children, were murdered here by Pakistani soldiers and their local supporters. It was one of 5,000 so-called killing fields which were used during a 9-month killing spree, and for which no one has ever been sentenced to any crime.
In the grounds of Dhaka University, a memorial to the 46 teaching staff, assistants and students who were dragged from their beds and murdered in what many Bangladeshis say was a systematic attempt by Pakistan to destroy the Bengalis' fight for independence. Even though the world saw what was happening, a combination of international manipulation and domestic politics pushed the issue of the Bangladesh genocide under the carpet.
This story reminds me of the Holocaust stories.
Dr. Hassan is one who has strived to make Bangladesh and the world come to terms with that terrible period at the birth of the nation and to see justice.
Perfectly well, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind. Our troops are stationed there because we were threatened by the military regime of Pakistan. In no uncertain words, there has been a situation of indirect aggression. And I don't think that you could point out to me any other head of government who in the present circumstances would have been so restrained, when the entire country is not restrained. And it is great difficulty that we are holding the situation. And then what we get outside is to equate us with a government which has killed more than 1 million people, which has created conditions of barbarity which I don't think the world has very seldom seen. Perhaps against the Jews in Hitler's time, but I don't think in any other time of history has this sort of thing been witnessed.
This story reminds me of the Holocaust stories.
Dr. Hassan is one who has strived to make Bangladesh and the world come to terms with that terrible period at the birth of the nation and to see justice.
If the perpetrators, they don't open up their mind, if they don't confess, how can you forgive? How can there be dialogue? One should open their mind and tell the truth.
He is part of a Bangladeshi group called the War Crimes Fact-Finding Commission, which has just issued a list of nearly 1,600 names of both Pakistanis and Bangladeshis who, it alleges, committed war crimes in 1971. These include some members of one of the country's most powerful religious parties, Jamaat-e-Islam, 3 of
को बांग्लादेश आज़ादी चाहता था, हम लोग उसको नहीं छोड़ना चाहते, लेकिन ये कहाँ का असूल है कि उनको मारो पीटो, उनकी औरतों को रेप करो, ये तो बहुत ही ज़्यादा ज्यादती है ना, बहुत ज्यादती है। और मैं तो कहती हूँ जितनी मुझसे माफ़ी मांगी जाए उतनी कम है, लेकिन अल्लाह की तरफ से सज़ा मिल रही है ना पाकिस्तान को, किसी की जान माल महफूज नहीं है, अपने ही हाथों। और
the 4 passenger carriage. Yeah.
Tapan Kumar Das is aware. He's a Hindu. He remembers the day, 13th of June 1971, the time just after dawn, and the scene after he and 430 men, women and children were loaded onto a train at Saidpur railway station, 6 hours north of the capital, and taken a kilometre down the track to Calvert 337.
They're crying, help me, save me, save me, oh God save me. But no one there. No one there. They killed us one by one. Only 21 people, 21 young men, we jumped from the train and narrowly escaped.
They, he says, were Pakistani soldiers and their local supporters. He says he lost 13 members of his family that day, including his father, elder brother, uncle and cousins, cut down by swords and bullets and a pre-planned execution. Once this was simply a 6-room private house. It's now testament to one of the biggest examples of genocide of the 20th century. The privately run Museum of the War of Liberation is dedicated to upwards of 3 million people, half of them Hindus, allegedly murdered during a 9-month period in 1971 by Pakistani forces and their allies. For years, few people in Bangladesh spoke about the horrors of that period.
There were people who even didn't know about the liberation war. They didn't even know about the genocide because there was a systematic policy of erasing that part of history after 1975.
It was a bloodbath that lasted for 9 months. In those days, Bangladesh was known as East Pakistan and governed by Islamabad. When momentum grew for independence, Pakistan launched a terrifying crackdown. Tens of thousands of civilians and freedom fighters were murdered. 10 million refugees fled to neighbouring India, but it led to the creation of the new nation of Bangladesh, but at a terrible cost.
It's hard to imagine, but this place of sport and recreation was once a place of execution and butchery. It's claimed that in 1971, hundreds of people, including women and children, were murdered here by Pakistani soldiers and their local supporters. It was one of 5,000 so-called killing fields which were used during a 9-month killing spree, and for which no one has ever been sentenced to any crime.
In the grounds of Dhaka University, a memorial to the 46 teaching staff, assistants and students who were dragged from their beds and murdered in what many Bangladeshis say was a systematic attempt by Pakistan to destroy the Bengalis' fight for independence. Even though the world saw what was happening, a combination of international manipulation and domestic politics pushed the issue of the Bangladesh genocide under the carpet. Among the public too, there is a growing sense of the need for justice and recognition that the past cannot be avoided. This is a memorial in Dhaka called Jalarkhanda. It means butcher's den. 37 years ago, civilians had their throats cut and were dumped into a peat well here. Sharikul Islam had a miraculous escape. He demonstrates how they lay him down and try to cut his throat, but the blade was too blunt and he survived. This lady won't forget her chapter in this history either. She was one of 450,000 women allegedly raped by Pakistani soldiers. Many gave birth, some had abortions, and some committed suicide because the shame was too much to bear. She was raped repeatedly over a month.
My life exploded after that experience. It started a fire of pain inside me. The only way for that pain to ease is for the war criminals to be brought to trial.
That process could only move ahead with an official application by the Bangladesh government to the UN. That can't happen until at least next January, when elections are due to be held, so the current caretaker government can be replaced.
We Americans are aware of what's happening in Cambodia and South Vietnam because this country has a big stake there. But Bangladesh is a different case. There is no major American involvement or commitment there, nothing which approaches the needs of that young, impoverished nation. And so the memory of what happened there may already be growing dim in many of us. But what did happen there will never be forgotten by the people of Bangladesh, especially the women.
It was in villages like this that the Bengali liberation struggle caught fire. And it was in villages like this that the Pakistan Army took its revenge. The villagers still speak of it, the men telling their stories of fighting, the children telling their stories of running and hiding. It is the women who are silent, women like Saira. She is 16 years old, a widow, and pregnant with the child of a Pakistani soldier. Like thousands of women throughout Bangladesh, she is carrying a child she does not want.
She says that her husband was in the Mukti Bahini. He was a commander of the force, in the village. And this army people were looking for him, and they had broken into her house to take him away, actually. And when they were dragging him out of the house, she started screaming and protesting and crying, trying to hold back her husband. And one of them turned back and raped her in front of her husband, who was forced to sit and watch with guns pointed at him. And later on she
like
says
many
that
women
she
who were
didn't
raped by Pakistani soldiers, Saira is in disgrace among her people. Her parents take care of her, but they are certain that no man will ever marry her. Since January, many of the women ravaged by the Pakistani troops have been living in this house. They're being cared for by a government-sponsored women's rehabilitation group. Almost all of the women here are pregnant. They are very young, some only 13 years old. In a few cases, their parents have abandoned them. In others, their husbands have rejected them. About 70 have had abortions, and those who have had their babies plan to give them away. Most of the girls here were held prisoner by the Pakistani troops in the army barracks. For weeks, each day and each night, they were forced to submit to whatever the soldiers demanded. This is Rushanara, 14 years old and 7 months pregnant. She was abducted from her home in Dhaka and taken to the army barracks, where she remained for 3 months. She says there were nights when as many as 30 soldiers forced themselves on her. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman has said that these women are heroines. But politics, the war, and even the liberation are not really the concerns of these women. They are the innocent victims of war, and the children they bear will share in their grief. This is Liz Trotta, NBC News, in Dhaka, Bangladesh.
Many of the soldiers who attacked those women are among the 100,000 Pakistani prisoners of war held by India. India has offered Pakistan what it calls unconditional talks.
What we get outside is to equate us with a government which has killed more than 1 million people, which is created, if we would agree. And one thing you must remember is that we have never attacked anybody, but we have been attacked 3 times.
But Mr. John Stonehouse, wearing a suit, and Mr. Bruce Douglas Mann didn't have to look far for evidence of the suffering that turmoil in East Pakistan has created. These women, queuing patiently in a seemingly endless line for their family's 1 meal of the day, are just a few of nearly 300,000 refugees who've now fled across the border into India. Almost 100,000 are in camps like this one. The rest are waiting at the gate for admission or have found shelter with relatives. The Indian government is providing rice, 100 grams per adult a day, and paying for other food bought by the volunteers who are helping run the camps. Each refugee carries an identity and ration card which states the number of people in the family and the amount of food they're entitled to.
Here's your card. Hope you enjoy your meal.
The threat of some epidemic is real. Though new water supplies are being hastily provided, sanitation is primitive. These new arrivals are being inoculated against typhoid and cholera, as well as smallpox. The MPs were anxious to hear why the refugees had been forced to leave their homes and take refuge in India, their traditional enemy. This man related how his father, mother and brother had all been killed by soldiers of the West Pakistan Army in Jekagacha, a village only 13 miles away. Most of the people in the camp were women and children. One young mother told Mr. Stonehouse how her husband, who worked in an army cantonment as a clerk, was simply lined up with 24 other men and shot by the soldiers. She herself, though pregnant, was beaten unconscious with the butt of a rifle. Like some 30% of the refugees, this woman was a Muslim, evidence that the bond of a common religion has not meant as much to the Punjabi soldiers as their hatred of the Bengalis. The 2 camps the MPs saw were trying hard to cope, but when the monsoon rains begin in a month's time, conditions are likely to deteriorate. International aid will be welcome to help care for people who cannot be moved far from the border, hoping as they must to return to their homes before long. At Mamavagina camp, opened just that day to cope with a new wave of refugees, I asked the 2 MPs about their impressions of what they'd seen and heard. Mr. Douglas Mann, from the stories you've heard today of the killing across the border, how do you assess it?
Well, I can't assess the scale of it, but it is certainly very serious. We've spoken to many people from many different villages who have confirmed the stories that have already appeared in the British press. They're both Hindus and Muslims. The stories of troops coming into the village, sometimes of burnings of the entire village, sometimes calling out those who have been associated with the Awami League. And sometimes the atrocities have also been committed, we are told, by Bihari Muslims. but they're directed against Bengalis, both Hindus and Muslims.
This has gone beyond an internal sovereign affair, because it's quite clear that neither the Pakistan army nor the new Bangladesh administration can cope. And with a major problem of this description, the international community must move to do something. It's not good enough to wash our hands of this responsibility and say that we do not interfere in the affairs of a sovereign state.
The two MPs ended their day by visiting the border itself. The road was crowded with ox carts and refugee families making their way on foot. At the river crossing at Boira, the MPs could look across into East Pakistan. Mr. Stonehouse is primarily concerned to deal with the widespread hunger many observers foresee. Mr. Douglas Mann and his committee are fighting for a ceasefire and political justice for the Bengalis. Those aims are equally important, but at present just as equally far from fulfillment. Richard Lindy, News at 10, Bongan.
But do you support the Bangladesh guerrillas? Do you support a separate state in East Pakistan?
You see, it's not a question of supporting or not. The question is what is likely to happen. I don't think we can shut our eyes to the situation in a neighboring state. I think, and I personally think that most of the world believes this, so they may not be willing to say it out openly, that Pakistan as it existed can never be the same again.
But do you see yourself somehow being drawn into this, being involved in this in some way, that you might have to intervene in East Pakistan? Out of humanity, almost.
Well, East Bengal is the affair of the leaders of East Bengal. Now, it's up to them what should happen there.